Taiwan, I'm Eric Gao. Thanks for joining us. Rescue teams are searching for people stranded in Taroko National Park in eastern Taiwan after a magnitude 7.2 earthquake shook the country on Wednesday. That quake caused multiple rock slides in the area, and fallen boulders have blocked mountain roads. Rescuers marched on foot to reach people at several major points along the park's main artery. 6 workers stranded at the Hualien mining district have been airlifted to safety. The rescued miners sustained minor injuries and were sent for treatment. 671 people remain stranded in Taroko and in Hualien County, the epicenter of the earthquake. Now, our reporter Rick Lauert, he has been following developments from the Disaster Response Center in Hualien. Rick, what can you tell us about the relief efforts?
There's a lot of activity here at the Disaster Response Center at the bottom of Taroko Gorge. A busload of people who have just been saved from up in the mountains behind me just came down here and were received by the emergency response people here. We've got the army, we've got the firefighters, and we've also got teams of doctors here all working on the efforts. There's aftershocks continuing around this area. We had 2 big ones in the last hour. And this is also where people are gathering for news for people who are still left, missing and trapped in the mountains. Take a look at this. An anxious wait for news. These families still have relatives trapped on Taiwan's mountains, 2 days after the largest earthquake in 25 years hit the country. 64-year-old Lin Qianhui last heard from her son through this online post. He stopped off in the national park here on his way to visit her for the long holiday weekend.
在心里一直祷告他们，祈祷他们，叫朋友帮忙祷告，集众人的力气，帮他们，希望他们平安。
Dozens are still missing in this national park. The magnitude 7.2 quake hit just kilometers from here, bringing landslides down the mountains and sending boulders crashing onto hiking paths and roads. Rescuers are battling some of Taiwan's most rugged terrain. 3,000-meter-high mountains rise from very steep gorges. This natural site attracts hundreds of thousands of visitors each year, and a number of this quake's fatalities were tourists being hit by falling rocks. Rescuers have made contact with many of those stranded in the area's hotels and on its hiking trails, but others are still unaccounted for. Bad weather is making helicopter trips difficult, and the steep valleys mean drones easily lose connection. But Taiwan is no stranger to this type of disaster. Teams here train regularly for this eventuality and have recently been deployed in global disaster zones.
我觉得我们这个任务执行到目前为止呢，都还算是顺利，而且效率也不错。那我有把握这个任务是可以顺利完成的。所以我们搜救人员虽然很辛苦，而且冒着很大的风险。 但是我相信我们的同仁应该可以把它做得很好。
As large aftershocks continue through a 3rd day, rescue workers, unfazed, focus on the task at hand. They're hoping to soon clear key roads and bring more people to safety. But for these families, each minute is an agonizing wait for news of their loved ones. Quiet confidence here of professionals getting on with the job that they're trained to do. We've seen a steady stream of helicopters going up to the valley. Here, they've been delivering food to people that are trapped and also taking people down from the mountains. A little while ago, I spoke to a 64-year-old American tourist. She's been trapped in the mountains for 2 days after the car she was traveling in was hit by rocks. They smashed through her windscreen. She was taken down by helicopter this morning and will be on her way to Taipei now. So there's no let-up in the efforts here to get everyone back to safety.
Thanks for that, Rick. That was Rick Lauert reporting from the Disaster Response Center in Hualien. Now, engineers, they are crediting Taiwan's building codes with keeping damage from Wednesday's earthquake to a minimum. But as John Van Trieste reports, there still may be problems with the quality of construction materials, and older buildings are more at risk.
Days after one of the strongest earthquakes in Taiwan's recorded history, the damage is relatively light. This building near the epicenter in eastern Taiwan is one of just a few that's beyond salvaging, and all but one of its occupants have survived. Engineers say Taiwan's building codes are to thank for that. The last time an earthquake of similar strength hit Taiwan, September 21, 1999, over 2,000 people died. It was a moment of national trauma. In Taiwan, the very date, 9/21, still has the kind of horrific connotations dates like 9/11 have in other countries. The event triggered serious changes to regulations and retrofitting projects. This time, most of the confirmed deaths are the result of rock slides, not building collapses. and the buildings that did collapse this time were built before the newer rules. Mandates like more robust steel bars appear to have saved lives. Still, engineers say, contractors may be tempted to cut corners.
台湾的建筑基本上都要做到抗震，因为有基本法规，只是说法规规定是法规规定，那设计它一定会设计足够的钢筋量，可是重点在采发营造的时候用最低价嘛，那最低价就不可能会有最好的品质嘛，所以当然品质就会扣分，主要风险在这里。
But it's older buildings without proper reinforcements that are especially at risk. Historic buildings, including listed heritage sites, suffered significant damage. At this Japanese colonial-era temple, 17 kilometers from the epicenter, sacred statues have shattered, and wooden framing has come loose.
像这个上方已经严重的脱水。对，剧烈摇晃之下，左右摇晃之下都脱损了对，像这个这原来的它的卡的地方已经都脱落了。
At this historic sugar factory in Taichung, a smokestack already awaiting repair now needs fast action to fix new cracks and fissures.
在这一段可能会有一阵期间先把它封闭起来，所以我们现在没有让游客进去到里面。
In all, 59 sites under various levels of protection need repairs and are awaiting special government funding. Taiwan has made important progress on earthquake preparedness in the last 25 years. But when it comes to older buildings especially, the country's still not immune to heavy damage. Joseph Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
The earthquake left tourists scrambling right before a long weekend, and tourism businesses near the epicenter are now feeling the impact. Tiffany Wong reports.
A historic hotel in eastern Taiwan, devastated by the magnitude 7.2 earthquake that hit the country 2 days ago. For many hotels in the area, the quake has put a halt to business, right at the start of an anticipated travel rush. It's the Tomb Sweeping Festival holiday weekend.
后续有人打电话进来，或是运用网络来定位的订房的，我们都直接跟他说，我们现在没有办法营业。那已经有付定金的，我们都会在下个礼拜一正式上班之后，会把这些相关的资料会全额的退款。
Attracted by its natural sights, many tourists flock here to Hualien, but hotels are only at 25% capacity, a sharp decrease from the original 75% booking rate before the earthquake. Many properties are undergoing inspections and repairs, and a major road into the county is still blocked by landslide debris. While train services have resumed, some tourists are still unwilling to travel as aftershocks continue to shake the region. Hoteliers are trying their best to adjust to their guests' needs.
清明年假期间，因为地震关系无法前来的客人，我们所有的会员饭店大家也都提供了弹性的做法，包含免费退费，或者是可以选择保留定金使用，3到6个月。
Further down the East Coast, which usually requires travel through Hualien, other businesses that rely on tourists are feeling the impact.
很多旅行社本来是连假要来这边骑车的，昨天取消了，5组客人。少了300多个游客，
影响非常的大，至少影响了5-6成的生意。
Recovery to businesses on the East Coast will take time, but they hope that by the next holiday season, they'll be back to normal. Dolphine Chen and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
A key reservoir in northern Taiwan is down to 27% capacity. The Simen Reservoir is an important source of water for farms in the region. Officials say they will put controls on irrigation to keep the water supply steady until late June. The reservoir is still able to put out 500,000 tons of water a day. Rain forecast for Friday and Saturday should ease pressure on the reservoir. A Taiwan-made mobile air defense system will make its debut in military exercises next week. Taiwan's largest weapons maker, the Zhongshan Institute, says it will test a field air defense system with anti-air missiles launched from the back of a truck. The system allows for greater mobility, something that Taiwan has been working toward in its defense strategy. Besides these weapons, Taiwan plans to fire a variety of other missiles at the drills in Pingdong in the country's south starting on Monday. Could the U.S. help Taiwan stop an all-out invasion from China? That's what a think tank in Washington is trying to figure out through Tabletop War Games. TaiwanPlus was granted exclusive access, and as a reporter Jaime Ocon found out, not all games have a winner.
With a roll of the dice, the U.S. and China are now at war over Taiwan. That's the scenario of this war game designed by U.S. military officials and leading security experts in Washington, D.C. They're playing to see what could happen in a hypothetical conflict. The year is 2026, and China is about to conduct one of the largest amphibious invasions in history. The attack starts with missile strikes on not just Taiwan, but also neighboring countries like Japan.
Very often the Chinese will attack the Japanese on the first or second turn. When they see what's happening here, U.S. forces forward deployed, they'll attack then Kadena, and if they figure, well, okay, if we're going to go after Kadena, and if we're going to bring the Japanese into the war, we might as well go after their other bases and their ships also.
The U.S. and Japan lose dozens of aircraft and a handful of ships, as many Japanese bases near Taiwan are targeted. After the pieces are moved and losses recorded, it's now Team U.S. and Japan's turn to make their move. Even with the U.S. caught off guard by the attack, it's still able to inflict a significant amount of damage to the invading Chinese force.
Okay. So on the first turn, when the United States really isn't able to bring a lot of combat power to bear, they've still been able to sink 12 Chinese ships. 12, and with 3 more here, that comes out to be about 18.
Okay.
So the Chinese are taking a lot of casualties over time.
During the next few turns, Team China manages to blockade Taiwan and lands troops on the southern beaches of Taiwan. They also sink a U.S. aircraft carrier and target more U.S. forces, but this time on the island of Guam, which is home to one of the largest U.S. military bases in the Western Pacific.
It's a balancing act of having the presence, right, as a deterrent, but at the same time recognizing that, you know, if Guam isn't, you know, on the top of the target list, you know, then obviously we're not strategizing properly, but, you know, it is expected that Guam will get struck pretty early.
In as little as 2 weeks, thousands of people have died and dozens of ships and aircraft from both sides have been destroyed. The team here has played this base case scenario dozens of times, and the results are usually the same.
Our finding is that the United States and the coalition can maintain an autonomous and democratic Taiwan. So in that sense, they win. On the other hand, we note that this comes at very high cost. The United States loses hundreds of aircraft, dozens of ships. The Taiwanese infrastructure is wrecked.
While the results are grim, the war game has revealed some important lessons on what the U.S. can do to better prepare itself. One of the most urgent tasks is speeding up delivery of U.S.-made weapon systems. Taiwan is still waiting on more than $19 billion worth of U.S. weapons, many of which have been delayed since 2019.
Once the war begins, you can't get weapons and munitions into Taiwan, unlike in Ukraine. Like the Poland situation. Right. And with Ukraine, the war began. The United States and NATO and many other countries have been flowing weapons and munitions into Ukraine through Poland. What that means for Taiwan is that it has to have all of the weapons and munitions that it needs for at least the first month or two.
While it is impossible to predict a war, the team at CSIS say that both the U.S. and Taiwan must be prepared for the worst-case scenario. And so as they continue their work, the focus is less on the results and more on the lesson that if this game becomes a reality, no one really wins. Devin Tsai, Eric Tsai, and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
You can find the full version of the War Game series on TaiwanPlus.com. Thanks for tuning in for What's Up Taiwan. Finally, relax and get ready for the weekend with images of the Blossom Kite Festival held in Washington, D.C. I'm Eric Gao. Y'all have a great weekend.